Good afternoon and good evening, good morning, everyone, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining us today. First and foremost, I wish and I hope that everybody is fine and keeping safe and out of harm's way in these extraordinary times that we are living. Clearly, it is unprecedented, and I sincerely hope that all of you, your loved ones, your families, your colleagues, your friends, everybody that you know is safe. Second, we had originally planned to have this event personally, live, all of us to be in various different locations around the world. We had wanted to do this in person, but clearly, given the conditions and the situation that exists today, the best way for us to do this is by remote calls, as we are doing right now. We do have a little bit of a personal flavor in having at least our faces being here. We believe technology has helped us a lot to stay connected in the middle of these unprecedented times. So thank you for participating in this. Clearly, as you can see, we have participants from all over the world, from Dubai, Hong Kong, London, Paris, Singapore, Sydney, and I'm sure there'll be others that are dialing in that are beyond these locations. Moving on, Life, as a lot of you know, has been founded 10 years ago. It was founded on the basis of trying to connect us all together as Lebanese living in the diaspora. A lot of us have left Lebanon for various different reasons. We traveled for education, we traveled for work, we traveled for relocation purposes, but we all feel a lot of strong affinity to Lebanon, a very strong affinity to our country and our origins as Lebanese. And the whole idea behind Life was to try to put us together in a format, in an organization, in a community that allows us to actually stay connected despite the fact that we live outside. As we all know, there's a lot of us outside of Lebanon. There's over 16 million people outside of Lebanon, spanning over 6 continents and spread in various different industries and disciplines. So in our connectivity, we thought first to start with finance. It's an area where a lot of us were connected. A lot of us had background and experience in. And we always thought that that was just the beginning. We never thought that we wanted to stay in the field of finance, but it was certainly important for us to initiate in it and to grow the organization, to build it on the basis of a strong foundation, on a basis of strong governance, and then use that as a connectivity point for us to then catapult from there and expand beyond it. The whole idea is for us to support one another, to nurture the upcoming generations, and to drive a positive change and promote cross-border equity for our nation, which is something that we continue to do. Our mission, simply put, is a global network of Lebanese professionals working together towards a brighter future. Now, today, the future might not look so bright in our country, which is all the more reason why we are doubling down on our efforts to do everything that we can to stay connected, to stay focused on delivering on our mission statement, and for us to start and continue to help in whichever way we can Lebanon in this very dark moment of its history. And there's a lot that's going on that front, which I can get to in just a minute. So what Life has built itself upon was on the basis of 3 pillars. A lot of you know this already, but some of you here attending this call are new to Life and hopefully will become members shortly following this call. So just to briefly tell you about our pillars, first was connect. And Connect was there to establish bonds amongst us. So we were connecting with one another on a global basis. We were setting up, not just social events for us to get to know each other, but also webinars and sessions and luncheons and speaking series along the side of interesting content and meeting with very affluent and interesting people that can give us a bit more flavor about what's happening in the economies, what's happening in the business world, etc. So we've connected on multiple fronts, and a lot of business connectivity has come as a result of that one. So that's the first one. The second one, which is one that actually a lot of us felt very strongly about, is nurture. And nurture, simply put, to help the next generation succeed is how we define it. But fundamentally, it is taking the best and the brightest of the Lebanese that we find, helping them in their education, helping them give funds, scholarships to continue their education, the graduate as well as the undergraduate, and then help nurture them, help give them mentors and guide them through their career path so that they can become successful Lebanese in the field of finance to begin with, but beyond that as we grow and progress. Promote was originally put together to help promote Lebanon as a hub for business, for finance, for various different things that we thought was important for us to help promote and help, give our expertise and influence in that development of the Lebanese economy. What has happened subsequently, and given the situation in Lebanon and given where things have headed, we have used Promote as a pillar for us to help spend a lot more time on policy initiatives and what we think is important for us to advocate for Lebanon, on behalf of Lebanon, and to help provide our expertise on the economic and financial situation that's unraveling in the country. So we've been a lot more front-footed, as you've seen in a lot of the papers that we've been publishing on that front. But also, very importantly, I want to underscore very important parts of all of our initiatives on the ground. So we care very deeply with what's happening. We have shifted a lot of our attention and focus over the past year in particular to help more so on the ground than we have really done in the recent, beforehand. So for one, we've taken the funds that we have raised in the most recent initiative, the gala that we have done, or the event that we've done in London. We've allocated $1 million for that to educate over 100 students on the ground in Lebanon, undergrad, more than grads. So we have donated this money towards educating in Lebanon, because we found a lot of people unable to continue that education. We've also put together an emergency relief fund. Again, it's new. We hadn't done this before, but this year we felt very compelled for us to be able to help, frankly, just the basic needs to be provided to people. And we're pleased to say that with the generosity of a lot of our members and friends, we've raised close to $600,000, which we've spent with a lot of local strong NGOs that we've vetted, and we have strong governance and transparency. And we believe through the monies that we've dispersed in Lebanon, we've been able to impact 100,000 lives positively. Now that initiative needs to continue. These types of initiatives need to never stop. There's a lot more need than we're able to provide ourselves. We've also spent a lot of time and initiatives on supporting entrepreneurships and supporting job creation in Lebanon. That's an area where we feel very strongly about. We've been granting a lot of money towards initiatives that help on that, and we will continue to do so going forward. You've seen a few here: Cody, SC Factory, Starticus, and Jobs for Lebanon, but we will continue to do a lot more in these initiatives as we grow and expand. Now, today is a moment where we had wanted to connect with a lot of you, prospective members in different fields that are beyond finance. Now, we started off, as I mentioned, in the field of finance, but as we look to grow from here, we believe that the community and the connectivity can expand beyond just the field of finance. And we've started in our phase 2 to go into or expand into consultancy, law, and tech, because we believe those three have very strong affinity and affiliation to all of us. And we know a lot of people within those fields. We work with a lot of people within those fields, and there's a natural extension that goes as such. And today is a chance for us to hear from the new chairs of those verticals that have helped us a lot on the expansion and putting together an idea around how this all can start. But we're not going to stop there. We're going to go beyond that. We have a phase 3 that is already being thought about, but we wanted to make sure that everything is done methodically and everything is done in a way that allows us to continue to be really honestly a community, and a community that works well together and expands together and continues to go and foster the mission statement that life has built itself upon. And it brings me great pleasure that we're having this call today, and we'll continue to have these discussions going forward as well. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Omar Saleem. Omar is a board member at Life. He's been with us for quite a while. He's the chair of the Life Singapore chapter and has spent a lot of time and effort in growing our initiatives. And he's also a very active member in the Promote Committee, and a lot of attention and focus on the policy initiatives that we've been doing. It gives me great pleasure to introduce him and have him talk a little bit more about our value proposition and introduce our vertical chairs as well. Ahmad?
Thank you, May. For those of us in Singapore, there was no pun intended with phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, which are the 3 phases of emerging from the lockdown. That was an interesting analogy, but thank you very much, May, and thank you for your time. I think the best way to really talk about Life and the value proposition of Life is to really be part of a global community. And here, I think the real operating word is community. To speak of personal experience, and I've been involved with Life since it's the chapter was incepted. When Life started becoming a bit more active in Singapore, it was actually the first kind of Lebanese organization that I was involved with. Even though technically Life is not a Lebanese organization, it's actually a Life expats organization. And I had some reluctance, you know, Lebanese, a lot of peacocking, you know, and Syrian falsafa alayhi and all of these things. But really, Life is a community of like-minded people. You know, Life expats share similar mindsets, share similar experiences. And Life, the community that Life created is really what, with the governance, with the professionalism, with the way how Life has been institutionalized, is really an example of what Lebanon could be and what Lebanon should be. So Life's mission is really runs quite deep in terms of gathering the Lebanese expats, first in finance and now hopefully in other fields. The other thing that I would say is Life is not a rigid organization, and this is really evidenced by the fact that we're continuously evolving. Life is what we make it to be. Life is what you make it to be. Life gives you a strong platform of connecting with some of the more interesting people of Lebanese descent in the world. It also gives a platform to give back, really, whether to Lebanon through Nurture, which is really a pillar that we're all very, very proud of, as we are for all pillars, but we're particularly proud, for instance, of we have given more than 250 scholarships since inception. And by the way, those scholarships are for students in Lebanon, outside of Lebanon. The ratio in terms of the gender ratio is roughly half-half. So we try really to model what we do and our initiatives to how we think Life should contribute in terms of what Lebanese should be and what Lebanon eventually should be. We have done quite a bit in terms of the jobs, creating jobs in Lebanon or helping each other. And that's in Nurture as well. Connecting, as May was said, Life provides a really strong platform to connect. It's not only to make friends, even though I certainly can say that I've made good friends through Life, but it's also for business introduction and for things such as career mentoring, just bouncing ideas off each other. And Promote gives you and gives us all really a way to give back to Lebanon more tangibly across a number of initiatives, whether it's the more recently incepted Emergency Relief Fund. Well, we're very proud to say that Life has raised $584,000 US that will be given in its entirety to a very carefully selected number of NGOs to do projects, whether it's policy, which Life takes great care in terms of making sure that whatever analysis that we do is impartial, is dispassionate, is very professional. So we have a name for ourselves now in Lebanon in terms of clear-headed policy analysis, or through the job creation that we spoke about. We'll talk a little bit more about the value proposition towards the end, but if you can flip to the next slide, please, Jihan, to talk a little bit about Life in the Middle East and Asia Pacific. I won't talk much about Dubai. I think Firas is on the line. May is obviously based in Dubai, but Dubai is obviously one of our most successful chapters within Life. It has also produced our chairwoman, and it's led by Firas. It's a chapter that is engaged in pretty much all of the initiatives, and it's a chapter that is growing, and also it served us as a starting point for our initiatives in the Middle East. I think we also have one member or prospect member actually dialing in from Saudi Arabia. So that is Dubai has been the starting point for our initiative in the Middle East. But more towards Asia, And really, Asia is a key area for us for life. And I don't think I have to talk too much about the idea, but really the growing weight of Asia financially, economically. So we are moving east in terms of our membership. Singapore was incepted in 2014, and I have here to mention it was the efforts that Naji Hamid did in Singapore back in 2014 to incept and start the chapter, also to Tawfiq Sahnawi. And now we're at 19, and I think that's a pretty good number for us here in Singapore, given that obviously the number of people of Lebanese descent here in Singapore is not as high as other places, even though it's growing. In Hong Kong, that's a chapter that's led by David. Also to mention that we have some very strong, even though the numbers is not very high, but we have some very strong members in Hong Kong, including, for instance, Philippe Lasmar, Rami Hayek. These are names that would make all of us proud. Sydney was incepted a bit later in 2016. I think Peter Samaan did a fabulous job in terms of growing that chapter, and I think that's a chapter with a lot of potential. Karen took over last year, and I'm sure she will continue the great job that Peter has done. I also have to mention that Sydney has is engaged in quite a few initiatives. We have, for instance, Maury Waked, who has been extremely generous towards life and towards the future generation of life, and he's quite involved in Nurture as well as other initiatives. And Singapore as well. I mean, just to mention that I think all three of those chapters, even though they're small, they try to punch above their weight. So we have, for instance, helped quite a bit out of Singapore to create some jobs. I think Rana might be on the call, but we have created some jobs for Beirut-based members within international organization, and we are part of a number of committees, and I look forward towards more engagement in all three chapters. Asia is represented within the board, so Naji was the first Asia-based board member, and now I am at the board as well. The last point I would say before handing over to Rindala, please, would be that Asia is also a good example of the fact that when life decides to expand, it really puts its resources towards that and towards encouraging good representation. So we're doing, for instance, that webinar in terms of in Asian hours. We have an Asia board representation, and I think the same would happen for consultants, for law professionals and technology. We are quite enthusiastic and hopeful to grow along these three verticals, and we will make sure that they get the representation and they feel involved and engaged in our initiatives. So Rindala, over to you. You're on mute, Rindala, though. No, you're on mute again. No, now you're good. No. Now you're good. Now you're good.
Okay, for the third time, thank you, Omar. And good evening to everyone. It gives me a lot of pleasure to speak today on behalf of Life as a Life member, who is Life which is looking to expand into law. For me, it's a very, as a lawyer, it's a very important milestone. It's something really I've dreamt of from the first day we started Life. I used to look at my colleagues who are in finance and think, oh my God, when am I going to see this happening with us as lawyers? So it gives me a lot of pleasure. Life from the beginning has opened its doors to lawyers who were in finance, if you will, corporate finance, etc., but not to other disciplines without a law. And as we know, we have many practice areas, and today we are opening that door based on a successful experience of Life in working along or towards the goals it had put for itself. I want to give you a little bit of my experience and why not only I had joined life, but why I stayed in life. I give life so much of my time, if you will, and why I think we're gonna go to even a bigger and brighter future by introducing the life model to now law, technology, and consulting. I joined life very early on, about 10 years ago, when we started the Dubai chapter. May, myself, and 3 other people, I think we were the first to start the Dubai chapter. I still remember when Paul Raphael flew to Dubai and we did sort of a kickoff. I thought it's a great idea. I thought hopefully we should grow into a few dozens. And I never thought after 10 years, I will look at a life that is close to 1,000 members, 850 members. And I'm sure very, very soon will be over 1,000 members. It was a vision. We all believed in it. We all worked towards it, but we were not sure we're gonna get there. We based it on governance, which is something that speaks very well to us as to the new, if you will, members we're hoping to join from the legal profession. Life has probably the first Lebanese organization to work along such a strong governance model. Shows that it works, and hopefully it will be emulated elsewhere. I continued with life, helped with the nurture, helped with the scholarship program, and so on and so forth. But in addition to helping with life, I want to say what I got out of life, because I think I got more out of life than I contributed. It is my hope that one day I can say I've contributed as much, but really what I received from life is enormous. I will say that I've met a lot of people in Dubai and then in the region and internationally through life. Many of my very close friends today, great friends, are people I met or at least solidified the relationship with via life. Many of my clients ended up coming from life or the life network. It's just been enormous. And of course, I didn't join life. I joined life to give back. I joined life because I wanted to be a good Lebanese that helps build something where we all give back to fellow Lebanese everywhere. But I really ended up getting a lot out of life. So I just, going back to your value proposition, Omar, I cannot emphasize how much we all get out of life. This is in addition to the content, really, which we started getting out of the Promote Committee recently, be it content on various policy issues, but be it also help with job creation programs and so on and so forth. So to me, it's been a pleasure to be part of this. I'm proud right now to go around in Lebanon and say, I'm a member of life, and here's how much I've gotten out of life. So I hope to have many, many more lawyers who can have a similar and better experience than I've had in the last 10 years. Thank you.
Excellent. Basil, why don't I hand it over to you so we can start moderated, or maybe we can go to Alexander right away.
Yeah,
sure.
No, I think.
Why don't we hear from the 2 other members spearheading the other 2 verticals? We can start with Alexander on tech.
Okay, thank you, Basil, Omar, and May. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Alexander Harous. I'm the chair of the Life Tech Vertical, and I'm happy to be with you today. Also, I would like to share my experience and why I joined Life 6 years ago. It was first for its mission and value proposition, and I wanted to really meet this international group of people, great professionals, to continue to empower our Lebanese community and also to meet people from the diaspora. And I was really pleased because it wasn't only meeting those people and being a part of this community. I now have friends, great friends within life. As also Wendala was saying, I have done a lot of business with a lot of LIFE members. I'm feeling really that I'm giving back to Lebanon through different initiatives in educational, economic actions, and also policy making. I recruited a lot of people from LIFE Network, and it's a great, really channel, quality people, extraordinary. And when we were talking about how we expand beyond finance, of course, technology is one of the key sectors, and we were wondering how we will do it. And initially we took the initiative to open to fintech, because I'm a fintech guru today, and then afterwards really the board and all the LIFE shares took the decision to really go beyond to really having people from technology sector, from law, from consulting, and it is obvious now we are creating an extraordinary ecosystem, actually, and we can really benefit from it, and our members can benefit from it. And what we are seeking now, what we are trying to really achieve, and what we would like to be able to offer to our members. First of all, I think we can have an entrepreneurship experience and a real network there, share trends and market intelligence. You know, again, hiring, because we have a extraordinary pool of talents within LIFE. We can get access to investors, to technology buyers, we can get access to markets, and simply I'm proud to be a part of this organization and helping Lebanon, helping Lebanese. But more than this, I think we can really create a lot of opportunities to everyone. And in the LIFE tech vertical, what we will do, we will really organize different webinars or events, I hope soon, where we can share experience, especially about the new technology, blockchain, machine learning, and different other things. And finally, I would like just to tell you that when I took the decision to open a coding school in Beirut, I just went to the board and I immediately get a support. So today we are, as LIFE members, creating a coding school in Beirut, which is one of the really key experiences or the first experience in Beirut I had since now 35 years, because I left Lebanon in '85. And thanks to LIFE, I'm really giving back, and I'm really happy to be a part of this network. Over to you, Bassel. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandre. Thanks for the passion. Ahmed, over to you.
Hi everyone. My name is Ahmed Youssef. I'm a senior partner at McKinsey. I couldn't help but remembering something that happened actually last night when I kind of saw everybody talking today, which is a friend of mine sent me a message to connect me with an HR firm that is in Lebanon. And that friend is in Paris today, and asking for help if we can actually connect that HR firm to companies in the Gulf. And I couldn't help but when we kind of heard about the connect and nurture and promote, to actually see this at play in a very basic example. So this is a friend that lives in Paris that I actually connected with after 10 years, after the London event that we had with LIFE. And this is a friend that I haven't connected with for a while. So this is kind of one of the things that I got from LIFE. And it's almost connecting with people that I knew, but also connecting with people that I wish I knew earlier. And to some extent, I have to tell you, by connecting, and I say that with an ache in my heart, which is, I felt ashamed in a way. I felt ashamed, but at the same time, I fed on the energy and the passion of the members to actually help Lebanon. But I felt ashamed that I actually haven't done a lot. I left in '93 and '94, and I've done very little. So that's kind of the first part, which is connecting with our connect. Part the nurture is I literally spend just half an hour today, half an hour, early this morning, just to talk to that entity in Lebanon. And what I felt is an amazing set of capabilities that we have in the country, and amazing firms that have been just exposed to Lebanon, but actually they could do so much better outside. And just with few recommendations and guidance, it opened up their mind to the person and the team member that I was talking to. It opened up their mind to the possibilities. And it's just the time that, I mean, I don't have experience in HR, but I know a bit the professional service industry well. So I was able to do that, and it felt so good to actually just within half an hour, it gave me quite a lot of joy. And then on the if I can connect to the promote side, you know, I was able to quickly connect them with 2 or 3 people. One of them is in live, but the others are not. And I realized it's something that is free for me to give, and it's actually a favor for the people we're connecting these organizations to, because they bring fantastic capabilities. And what I realized just from that example, how much life is becoming part of my life in a way, but also how much we can give to people. And I think within you know, the consulting, I know we're a small community, but we can have a lot of impact. And our request from you, both not just as the chair for consulting, but actually all life members, is to join us to really make that community, the more we are, the stronger we will be. And with our network, we can touch, you know, anyone in this world, because we are very well connected. And we as Lebanese, we actually have that power of connecting with people. So my request from you is join us. Let's shape what we can do. Again, technology and law are, you know, have benefited from Alexandre and Rindala's effort. So they're already more advanced. In consulting, we're not. So we need your help just to kind of get us organized and help us shape our strategy. So I look forward to connecting with you. Anyone that wants to reach out directly, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you very much. Maybe let me start before the panel facilitation. Let me start by thanking everybody who has spoken so far. So clearly, this is something very important for life. We have, you know, Rindala, Omar, 2 board members. We have May, our chairwoman here. We have the chairs of the 3 verticals who are, you know, speaking very passionately about this. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Basil. I am member of Life and on the Committee of Life here in Singapore. I've been part of Life for the last 5 years, give or take. I work for a bank. I'm a MD in Standard Chartered in strategy, and before that, I was in consulting for 10 years with McKinsey & Company. So I remember Ahmed from before the bearded days. So for sure, for me, this also resonates a lot, right? There's definitely a lot of impact that Life can bring through this expansion. We have 3 panelists that are here to share their experiences of Life, but also their perspectives on their sectors and the regions in which they're working in. Let me quickly introduce them, and then we will hear from all 3 of them in turn. And the idea is that we want to keep as much time as possible for Q&A. So as you hear our panelists, and as you reflect also on the words of the chairs and of May and Omar, please feel free to type in questions in the Q&A, and we will try to pick all these up afterwards. Or you can raise your hand, and we'll give you the mic after we hear from the panelists. So we have with us, and we'll hear from them in that order, David Daoud. David is the chair of Life Hong Kong chapter. He is the founder of a B2B digital learning agency called eLearn to Grow in Hong Kong. And before his forays in that space, he was in the financial industry for close to 20 years. We will then hear from Michelle Daoud. They happen to share a last name, but no family connection. She's a partner at Monks Hill Ventures, which is a VC fund that focuses on early stage tech startups in Southeast Asia. And she's a member of Life Singapore. And then we'll hear from Fadi Khouri. Fadi is a partner at a law firm, Coors Chambers Westgarth in Australia, which advises managers, fund managers, investors, and financial services companies. And he's a member of our Sydney chapter. So David, over to you. You may be on mute, David.
Hello.
Yeah.
I hope this is better. Sorry. So thanks a lot for the introduction. So I'm just going to explain a bit why I joined Life. So at the beginning, when I joined Life, this was to meet people, Lebanese people in Hong Kong, as I just arrived there. And this was back to 2014, the year of the creation of Life Hong Kong chapter. Then I discovered that this is much more than just networking locally here in Hong Kong. And I discovered that there is really a big thing going on out there. So I learned a lot about life, about my own country, about the challenges and all the efforts done by a group of people, life people, to make things better. And I really wanted to reconnect with Lebanese and to reconnect with Lebanon. And for me, life was an amazing medium for that. And there is a lot of energy. I mean, yeah, there is a lot of energy that gets me energized, not only in Hong Kong, but this energy comes from everywhere, from each life members and friends of life. And so today, how I feel about life, I mean, we heard about life vision, values, pillars previously, and I deeply find myself in that. And then how I feel about life is also that behind the words, there are real actions. And I had the pleasure to meet Paul Raphael here in Hong Kong last year in November. And we talked about Life White Paper, It's Time to Save Lebanon. It was back in November. And you probably read that a few days ago, Life announced that we have raised a total of $500,000 US to support 14 NGOs in Lebanon. And I think, I mean, for me, this is how I feel about life. It's having an impact on the ground and not just about talking. So maybe I can share a bit about my view on consulting here in Asia and Hong Kong. Yeah. So first of all, I would like to highlight that even if the situation is difficult and complex in Asia, most of the Asian economies still have positive growth, let's say. So even if the growth fell in 2020, it doesn't mean it's a big recession here in Asia. And there are big impacts, but Asia is not down yet. So like everywhere, there are financial incentives and regulatory support from the government, but we are still in a period of certain uncertainty. So in terms of consulting, our main role is to help organizations to improve their performance through analysis of existing organizational problems and development of plans of improvement. And this is really the period to do that. And there are usually four main industries: strategy and operations, IT and digital, financial, and HR. Personally, my sector is the digital transformation consulting services, including learning and development that I'm doing now for some years, and the digital workplace of tomorrow. And I think tomorrow is today. We have been affected due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and most of the projects in Asia have been delayed, and few of them have been stopped. But our clients and prospects have other immediate priorities, and they have faced unprecedented operational and governance issues, and they have all been in high alert with all BCP plans triggered, business continuity plan triggered. So what impacts and what trends on consulting sectors in Asia? I mean, from my views, as you might know, digital transformation in the financial industry started some years ago. So, and most of our clients have a strategy in place when it comes to transforming the company to keep up with the fast-changing environment. So, I was going to say there is nothing new. No, it's not true. Now there is some acceleration on something that has been planned before. So we are talking about new technologies and digital transformations for a while. And today, more than ever, we live in a technology-driven world with very strong regulatory requirements. And these are the focus for most of our clients: the digital transformation, regulatory requirements, compliance. And so very recently, I mean, just for examples, and I won't go too much in detail now, so I can reply to the question just after. For example of recent initiatives, so digital transformation with the bank's smart branches. So it's a project we had with a Chinese group. Regulatory reportings, because contrary to Europe or US, Asia is a set of several countries, so you don't have one regulation, you have 15, 20 different regulations, and so you have a lot of regulatory reporting. We discussed previously about AI, NLP with the tech part, and we have a lot of projects on robot process automation to make the processes more efficient. And sure, now it's a world of learning, so digital learning to support a wider digital transformation and regulatory requirements, meaning that in digital transformation, you have the digital component and you have the transformation component, and the transformation means you need to train your people to help them to keep up with all these changes. So that's all from me.
Thank you, David. So a very, very vibrant and still dynamic digital environment despite the complexities. Michelle, do you want to tell us your views on from a VC perspective?
Yeah, thanks Basil, thanks David. So yeah, this is only my second year as a life member actually, but I've probably already experienced a lot of the benefits, both professionally and personally. And I'll echo some of the themes that you've heard already. You know, I think it's enabled me to meet potential investors for my fund globally, to have access to candidates actually both for my fund and the portfolio companies. I've been able to tap into experts to help me with due diligence for specific deals that I'm looking into. I think the caliber of the talks that have been organized and the caliber of the speakers actually are probably people I wouldn't have access to otherwise. And then personally, for me, it was a way to really meet the Lebanese community in the region, and more importantly, to connect back with Lebanon. And in a way, you know, however small, to give back as well. So whether that's through the Life Impact Fund, you know, mentoring, some of the other initiatives under the Nurture pillar. So for me, it's been a very fulfilling and meaningful affiliation already. Yeah, let me tell you a little more about the tech entrepreneurship ecosystems around here, which is, you know, what I focus on. When you think of the tech ecosystems in Asia, there's basically a few big distinct ecosystems. So you have China, obviously a huge market, very mature, quite crowded ecosystem. You look at the number of unicorns that has already overcome the US, not that it's the best measure of success, but definitely one indicator of maturity. You have a lot of great engineers, very deep tech. You know, it's a pretty advanced ecosystem. You also have India. India is the other big one, probably several steps behind China, more fragmented, lots of inefficiencies. Entrepreneurs actually tend to invest more in the underlying infrastructure. It's a very price-sensitive market, so innovation has to be very affordable. And then you have, like, when you start looking at North Asia, when you look at Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and then also like Australia and New Zealand, those are obviously very different underlying macros, very different growth patterns. You have like fewer inefficiencies that need to be solved. They're basically different kind of innovation models. It's not considered emerging market investing, obviously, so you can't expect the same risk return profile. And then Southeast Asia is the market that I focus on. It's probably a little bit the new kid on the block. I think the whole ecosystem is at most a decade old in some parts of Southeast Asia. And for me, it's one of the most exciting ecosystems actually in the region, maybe even in the world. So I'll tell you a little more about why I think Southeast Asia is such an interesting ecosystem. And then if we have time, I'll cover some of the innovation that we're seeing on the ground, and the recent impact of COVID. Yeah, so Southeast Asia, I mean, it's a region that has consistently been delivering very healthy GDP growth over the past 2 decades or so. It's a very large population, over 600 million people. It's a young population, very mobile first, you know, tech savvy. Actually, the internet penetration, if you look at the ASEAN 6, so that's, you know, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines, the internet penetration is way higher than the one of India, and recently even overtook China. So we're at about 60%. And most of them actually connect through their mobile phone. And they spend, you know, when you look at the number of hours spent on mobile per day in Southeast Asia, it's one of the highest in the world. You do have very diverse cultures and different regulatory frameworks, but ultimately you have very similar underlying problems. And it's a region that is used to, you know, that has been used to doing business together for a long time. You also have another interesting phenomenon that we've observed, which is what we call sea turtles. And so those are the Southeast Asian returnees, people that are coming back from, usually it's the US, they bring back their experience in tech and entrepreneurship, and they help solve for the fact that it is a new ecosystem. We have a lot of first-time entrepreneurs. And we had seen a very similar trend in China several years ago, and those returnees have been, they've actually created some of the most successful companies in the ecosystem. So overall, it's an ecosystem that's young, but it has matured very nicely over the past few years. We already have several success stories, increasingly international interest as well in the region, and a pretty rich and healthy deal flow. I'll probably stop here. I'll add one last point of what motivates me personally in investing in Southeast Asia, and then we can leave the rest for Q&A. But you know, when you look at tech entrepreneurship in emerging market like Southeast Asia, I think it's important to remember also the immense value creation potential it has, and the ability to basically uplift a whole society. You have, you know, people that have never connected to the financial system before that are connecting for the first time. You have, you know, a lack of access to quality education that's being tackled, to affordable healthcare, and, you know, basically giving people access to products and services that they wouldn't have access to otherwise. And for me, that's one of the things that's super interesting when you're doing tech investing in emerging markets versus some of the more developed economies. Yeah, so I'll pass it over to Fadi, who's gonna talk a little bit about law.
Great, thank you, Michelle, and thank you all. Thank you for inviting me, giving me the opportunity to share my experiences with life and giving a perspective on the expansion into law. So by background, I'm a lawyer, and my specialty happens to be in the investment and financial services space. So I have a natural connection with the finance sector, and I was privileged to be an early member of Life and got to be involved in some of the early initiatives of Life. You know, why I got involved in Life, the connect, nurture, and promote mantra resonated with me. As I think Rindala said before, I'm a net receiver of benefits, if you like, from the tremendous Life platform. Just at a very practical level, some of the activities that Life Australia, and in particular Sydney chapter, rolled out included, at a basic level, keynote addresses by ministers, business leaders, many of those business leaders being individuals of Lebanese heritage, and effectively access to senior business and government leaders, opportunities for fireside chats and discussions with leaders from different parts of the community, in particular the finance community. A lot of fun having networking drinks and lunches and dinners. A memorable event that we hosted was a careers night, which was focused on giving insights to more of the younger generation of people with Lebanese heritage into what does it mean to be a fund manager? What is the work of a fund manager involve? What does the work of a lawyer involve? What does the work of a private equity fund manager involve? What does an investment banker do? And so, just by way of example, one of the contributors to Life in Australia, Maury Waked, who was mentioned before, is a successful quantitative investment manager, probably the most successful in Australia. And he spent 20 minutes explaining the technical side as a deep dive learning session for a young audience, and actually quite significant learning for people already in the industry. What is quantitative investment management all about? Great learning opportunity there. On some travel I did to London, I was hosted, warmly hosted for breakfast and lunch by some of the Life members there. And in the reverse, we hosted and had dinner with some visiting people from Canada and Singapore and other places. I was also hosted in a Lebanese restaurant with David and the group of Life members in Hong Kong, which I fondly remember and I'm grateful for. So what's the relevance of Life's expansion into the legal sector? I think the role of lawyers is very natural. It's a very natural extension for Life. There's clearly a lot of crossover. You know, a lot of leaders in the finance and technology and venture sector, you know, originate as lawyers or, you know, start as law graduates or law professionals. Indeed, you know, those that practice in the space that I do, servicing, when it comes to Australia, one of the largest industries, the broader financial services industry, there's a very natural crossover there. There's a natural crossover with technology and consulting, and a lot of resonance with what Michelle and David discussed. You know, we are commercial advisors to the finance sector, to technology, venture capital, and we work alongside consultants who service all of these areas. And there's a very natural crossover in terms of the learning, the understanding of the sectors, and the sharing of relationships and contacts and know-how. So I've been asked to just very quickly touch on some themes and perhaps the relevance for APAC, if you like, Asia and the Middle East. And I'm just going to quickly touch on these because I think I've got a short time window. In Australia, you know, what's been going on in terms of regulation and law? Well, certainly, like many other jurisdictions, we have experienced a dramatic ramp up in the level of governance and the expectation on boards and senior management of institutions and corporations. We have a modern slavery legislation which requires you to deep dive into the supply chain of your businesses, regulation of data protection, a robust and growing anti-money laundering legislation. When it comes to financial product sales, you know, that's becoming heavily regulated, in particular when it comes to the sale of financial products and services into the retail market. We've had some significant, what we call Royal Commission independent reviews into those sectors, and we're continuing to see the consequence of those reviews and in particular enforcement and restructures of the entire financial services ecosystem in Australia as a result of those reviews. Right now, and this happens whenever there's dislocation in the market, and in particular coming out of COVID, we're seeing a lot of capital markets disruptive activity taking various forms. We see the role of special situations or activist funds, many of them headquartered or managed out of Singapore or Hong Kong or the US or London, taking advantage of opportunities for tactical or recapitalization or similar investment opportunities. Only recently we had Bain Capital approved as the successful bidder for the $1.2 billion recapitalization of the Australian business of Virgin Airlines, which is under distress given the lockdown. In terms of the Australian financial services and investment management community, it's very globally minded. It naturally is. And again, a natural reason why Australia, and in particular this key sector that we as lawyers and others here service and are connected with, why it's so relevant for Life. We have significant pension funds that are global investors. We have investment management and investment banking firms like Macquarie Group that is a leader in the origination of investment products in the infrastructure and financial services space globally. In the reverse, when it comes to investment into Australia, we are going through a review and a tightening of Australia's laws when it comes to the vetting of foreign capital looking to take a stake in Australian opportunities. Australia is in the middle. It has a close relationship, a traditional close relationship with the US, and has China as the #1 and 2 trading partner. So it's caught in the middle. That means it will be brought into tension and struggle when those two superpowers look to clash. And we're seeing some of that now with some trade related challenges by China, and as a response, the Australian government is tightening its foreign investment rules, in particular, although it's not written, with a view to regulating Chinese investment into Australia. We have an Asia region funds passport, so firms from a handful of Southeast Asian countries, including Australia, can originate financial products and distribute those into the various markets. Again, another example of the connectivity between Sydney, Melbourne, Australia, and the rest of Asia and the Middle East. So finally, Australia is a significant market for the raising of capital. And so there's a very natural connection between Australia and each of the jurisdictions represented here today. I'm going to stop there given the short time available, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Fadi. Thank you, Michelle. Clearly, there's this theme that Ahmed brought up about us gifting, knowledge, capabilities, etc., came up in all of your speeches, be it educating younger generations, be it much more structured, like what Alexandre described, digital literacy. There's a few questions that came in through the feed. Maybe before jumping to those, I had one which I think I would like to ask Michelle first, which is, we heard about changes of flows of capital from Fadi in Australia, driven by the US-China situation, etc. Do you see something similar in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, we're seeing that too in Southeast Asia as well. It's not a recent trend, actually. It's just become a little more formalized over the recent years due to the, macroeconomic situations, development of the tensions between the US and China. But the reality is China's interest in the region has been a trend that we've observed over the past few years. And you've had a lot of flow of capital, both into Southeast Asia, into India, and other parts, from whether that's Chinese strategic investors or financial investors from China. So that's one trend. The other big one is when you look at some of the international investors that have traditionally, when they've wanted exposure to the VC asset class and emerging markets, traditionally they've invested in China and India. You've recently started to see an increased interest in Southeast Asia as an alternative market for them to invest in. Because valuations are still more affordable, it's a newer ecosystem, and there's more white space to be captured now compared to China and India that have become more mature and have their own challenges.
Thank you. Michelle Kilsey has raised his hand. Could we unmute Michelle?
Yeah, go ahead, Michelle. Oh. Or not. Michelle?
Yeah, I'm really sorry. It might be by error. Sorry for that.
Okay.
No problem. So let's pick up a couple of the questions on the Q&A feed. I realize we're slightly over time. So let's start with one for Alexandre from Rawad, which is about Cedar Oxygen. Can you tell us more about this initiative and how Life Promote can be relevant?
Yeah, of course. Actually, Cedar Oxygen is an initiative to create a fund in Europe, precisely in Luxembourg, to help the Lebanese industrialists buying their raw material and importing the raw material to Lebanon, transform the raw materials, and export their finished products. We are about to launch this initiative now. we have had a lot of issues. And let me say it in few words. Actually, we're optimistic to create this very quickly, but based on what is happening in Lebanon, because of what's happening in Lebanon, a lot of institutions, mainly the banks, were really anxious about working with Lebanon in KYC, AML, and co. And this delayed us a little bit, but now it has been resolved, and we are about to announce the launch in, let me say, in 2 or 3 weeks. How Life could help? Life is helping from day one, and a lot of members from Life are helping, and also Life as an organization will be helping. I'm in contact now with Paul Rafael and May Nasrallah and Nadine in order to really prepare how the framework of how Life as an organization could help. But it's a typical example, actually, how we can really get support from Life members. And when we launched this initiative, I was in contact with a lot of Life members and really get a lot of help. Some of them it didn't work, some of them it worked perfectly. So it's how we can use our Life network as well. But I would be really pleased to announce in the next 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks maximum, that we are ready to start transacting.
Thank you, Alexandre. This is very exciting. I realize we should try to wrap up in the next 7 minutes to allow Omar and May to close us. So maybe we pick up another 2 questions in order. So why don't we start with Michelle? Can you tell us literally in 1 minute? There's a question for you. Is the uncertainty in the sustainability of the business model of major e-commerce startups also seen in fintech?
Yeah, I think you have some business models where the sustainability is a bigger problem than others. And usually those are verticals where you need to grow at all costs. There's economies of scale. Usually it's a winner takes all market. So some industries lend themselves more to that than others, and players are willing to subsidize growth, sometimes with no clear plan beyond that. And that's, for example, e-commerce, ride-hailing, and others. I think that's true of fintech as well in specific areas, and particularly where margins are thin, such as payments, for example, or consumer-facing businesses where you have to bear the customer acquisition cost. In general, that's also true of newer ecosystems where there's some maturity that needs to happen. It's a lot of first-time entrepreneurs, and focusing on underlying business unit economics and the business model is a muscle that needs to be trained. In a way, the COVID crisis is accelerating that learning. You have, I think it's something that started last year with some of the WeWork fiasco, amongst others, and an increased focus on underlying business models. But the crisis of COVID is almost a crash course in that, and it's a whole learning of an ecosystem that hasn't gone through a downturn before. It's the first recession that the ecosystem is going through, and you're going to have, I think, a survival of the fittest, adjustments in valuation, and probably some mitigation of the irrational exuberance that we've been observing in some pieces of the ecosystem, including acquiring customers at all costs with no underlying business economics. So I think we'll walk away from this crisis as a stronger ecosystem overall.
Thank you. That's very clear. Why don't we go to the last question? So Rawad, I'm afraid you will not get your second question answered, only one. And we have some comments from Rabia Khouri, which do not require an answer. It's more of a comment for us to read. So Omar, that one is for you. What has been the response to the recent policy papers that we shared regarding the Lebanese economic situation from Lebanese decision makers? And that will be the last question, then we can move to you helping to wrap us up.
Sure, and I saw the questions from Rabia, and I think Rabia, it would be very good for you and Michelle to connect, so we'll be happy to do that. I think you would have a lot to talk about. If I put my promote hat, and specifically my promote policy hat, and answer that question, promote has been more vocal and more active in terms of issuing thought leadership pieces, advocating for reform, advocating for change. And there has been a bit of a crescendo in terms of how vocal we have been. Life, as you all know, is apolitical. This is something that we take very, very seriously and do not intend to change. So we try to walk the fine line between opining on economic matter that we all know are very heavily intertwined with politics, without really getting into the quagmire of politics in Lebanon. So what we have been doing is we have been issuing papers, and those papers have been seen by policymakers. One thing, for instance, that maybe some members do not know is we were among the first to ring the alarm bell in Lebanon, and we didn't want to be accused back then, 3 or 4 years ago, that we're alarming the kind of public sentiment around Lebanon. So what we've done is we've issued papers that we distributed to our members, but we also went and saw the policymakers, the most senior policymakers, including the president, the prime minister, some MPs, some ministers, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, those warnings were not heeded, and we are where we are. What we have been doing as well as being an expat organization is we're trying to influence policy through our channels, again, strictly on economic matters, whether it's in the US or elsewhere. And we are doing a few things that you can see on the website, not to take too much time on promote, which is essentially a topic that can take quite a bit of time, particularly given the situation in Lebanon. I'm happy to chat with anyone who wants to have a chat about this. You can contact me, but we do promote specific calls from time to time. We did 2 actually, I think in May, and we'll be doing more of those going forward. But it is a situation that we're very close to, and we have intimate knowledge of, and we try to do what we can, and our members want us to do more. To go back to our topic for today, which is the expansion into the new verticals. Thank you all very much for attending. I think we're over time, so I won't go through the last slides in detail, but I hope you saw the kind of passion that Life members speak of Life, and the different ways that you can get engaged, the different ways you can give back, the different ways you can connect or support Lebanon if you wish to. I think there is a lot happening, and again I go back to the point which I made earlier, which is Life is really not a rigid organization. If you become a Life member, you become Life, and you can try to shape the direction of Life while being on a pretty powerful and well-connected platform with a very strict and rigorous governance. If you can go to the next slide, you see the kind of criteria that we have. Anyone on the call today would be happy to talk with you in case you're thinking of joining Life. And we don't want to make this too salesy, so this is only if you think that you'd be interested and Life would be a good fit to you and you would be a good fit to Life. And with that, I'm going to hand it over back to May to conclude our call.
Thank you very much, Omar. And first and foremost, thank you very much to all of our speakers, all of our panelists, everybody that participated on the call today, to all of you that have dialed in. Clearly, this is an initiative that we are all very, very passionate about. You've heard perspectives from everybody on this call to tell you what Life means to them. And it means different things to different people, but certainly it means a lot to a lot of people. We are entering to the phase of going to 1,000 members and beyond. We are expanding, we will continue to expand. As Ahmed very nicely put it, the more we are, the stronger we can be. And really our intention as Life is to try to make a difference to the lives of individuals, but also to make a difference to the country as a whole. We're spending a lot of time and effort to see how we can influence change, yes, a lot of what we have asked and have been alarming on has fallen on deaf ears, but that doesn't mean we give up. We owe it to our country, we owe it to the generation of our children and our children's children, that we do everything we can to help this country that we all care so much about get to a better future, get to a brighter prospect, and really get us out of what seems to be an never-ending slump that we're heading towards. But we are stronger together. We will continue to grow. We will continue to influence. We will continue to make a difference on the ground. We will not stop these initiatives. In fact, we will enhance them. And everybody here on this call, everybody beyond, growing as an organization will only help us become more influential and make these efforts hopefully get to more fruition as we grow and as we prosper. But thank you very much for all of your participation. Life ultimately is a community. It's not just an organization. It's a community that continues to grow and expand in many different parts of the world. We have 11 chapters today. We will have twice as much hopefully in the years to come. And we will continue to connect and be there, available to each other, to our community, to our people, to our members, and to our country. Thank you again. We look forward to your participation as members and to seeing you hopefully in person in the near future. In the meantime, please stay safe and stay vigilant so that you can continue to be healthy in the middle of this pandemic that we're in. But thank you very much for your participation. Really a pleasure to have you on. Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you, May.